Buon pomeriggio e ben ritrovati. Ciao Andrea, sei collegato?
Yes.
Ciao Lorna, benvenuta.
Ciao, hi everybody. Good morning, good
Eccoci.
afternoon.
E Lorna, come vedete, quite disciplined. She's switching to English because, as I told you yesterday, we are connecting in the evening. Why? Because we have the pleasure to be joined by some friends from the other side of the ocean in the US, and therefore we switched the second episode of Mind the Change to a time that is more comfortable for the time zones of our guests that I will immediately, in a little bit, introduce to you. Let me, for those of you who were yesterday, this is the second episode of our Mind the Change week. We are focusing on entrepreneurship and design thinking. We'll talk about innovation and entrepreneurship. And in my opinion, Andrea, I don't know what you think about you, Lorna, we have the opportunity today to talk about these issues that you've heard so many times, peculiar way. Just briefly, otherwise the taxpayer is not happy with me. I need to just make sure that we are on the same page. Let me share with you these slides very quickly on Mastermind. As you know, the Mastermind is our executive master in collaboration with the Stanford University, and you will hear from our friends from Stanford in a little. Innovators is at the heart of the mission we have in mind, blending innovation, design, and management. We'll be starting in January. Enrollment is open for this program that will last 18 months. Enrollment ends at the end of September. We have the beginning of classes in Florence at the beginning of 2021, and the description of the program of Mastermind reflects the organization of Mind the Change Week. Yesterday we talked about innovation management with a fantastic panel. Today, design thinking entrepreneurship. Will start from here to understand what is interesting and relevant in the field of innovation and entrepreneurship. Tomorrow, human factor. We focus on talent, on the development of talent, of awareness of individual within organization. Tech drivers on Thursday, to then close on landscape on Friday. This is the program of the master and the program of the mind. Justamente, here is the online webinar. But you can see, and once again, stay tuned because in a little bit I will introduce you our nice and great speakers for today. But let me introduce you, first of all, the co-host that we have the pleasure to have, Andrea and I, today, who is Lorna Vatta. Lorna Vatta is an experienced manager. We had the fortune to attract her in Tuscany, back to Tuscany, after a very interesting experience around Italy, and she's now executive director of Artes. And Artes, some of you know, is the Industry 4.0 Competence Center of Scuola Sant'Anna. Lorna, benvenuta, ben trovata. From the first day you took the job as a director of Artes, I told you we need to do something together between Mind and Artes. Can you tell us a little bit the reason why, after so many months, you're still talking to me and you think it's a good idea that we work together?
Thank you, Alberto. Thank you. First of all, apologies. I'm going back to Tuscany from the northeast portion of Italy, so I had to stop, and I'm outdoor, and I'm struggling to find a silent space, but hopefully you can hear me. Well, welcome to our friends and colleagues from overseas, and why am I still talking to Alberto? Actually, it's a great pleasure always to talk to Alberto and all his colleagues from Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna, even if I'm a very basic engineer by training. I did my MBA at one point in my life, so that kind of fixed me. And I know, especially today, how important it is to cross-feed innovation through various competencies. And this is why we're here today. Artes, as a competence center, especially from the colleagues from the US, is a very Italian model of how to bring innovation, how to transfer R&D results into real companies. And this is what we exist for. So in Artes, we have universities, research centers, the best in Italy, or among the best in Italy, because it's eight competence centers in Italy. So we are the one based mainly in Tuscany, but not only. We have we have the Industrial Institute of Technology in Genoa, just to mention one, and we reach many regions. But also we reach about 100 companies directly as partners, and companies that have invested in the associations, both for themselves, but also for the Italian system to make innovation happen. But we don't want to speak only to industrial partners. We want to bring along also competencies staying in companies from other departments, because we will learn today, and I'm great and glad to be here today with such a panel. We will learn how important for innovation is to be started from mixed team, mixed with competencies, mixed because they're diverse, and hopefully we'll have more women on the panels in the future. Allow me that. But you know, many times in teams you have people even from administration or controlling, from HR, that can bring a lot of value in these situations. And this is what Mastermind is about, in my opinion. Learning about technology from the best people in the world, but also learning about some soft skills you need along the innovation process. This is what we're trying to do. Personally, I think I can learn a lot from the speakers today about this subject. And so just to cut the story short, I think we should start with them.
And it's great that you have agreed to continue the conversation with me, Lorna. I'm learning so much from your leadership style and management skills. So let's continue this conversation. As you said, Mastermind is fortunate to have found many friends along the way. And some of these friends have been with Scuola Sant'Anna for quite some time. I'm referring, of course, to our industrial partners, such as il gruppo Intesa San Paolo. Intesa San Paolo is one of the partner company of Mastermind, as you know, in the tradition of master companies, are and as well as Artes. And today, somehow, you know, representing the world of Intesa San Paolo, we have Bill Barber. Bill is an innovation ecosystem architect and executive advisor with Intesa San Paolo, but Bill had been advising along his very nice and fortunate career over thousands and thousands of companies. So to introduce you, Bill, first of all, can you hear me? I would like to ask you. Yesterday we talked a lot about, when we're talking about innovation management, between the blend of institutions, of collaborative forms of innovation. Somehow, you know, to put you, I hope, within your comfort zone, I would like to ask you, what is the secret recipe for large groups and companies that you advised in the past of smaller dimension to enter in collaborative and open forms of innovation.
Been in my comfort zone. I think I've lived my entire life outside of my comfort zone, so this is no problem. Yeah, this is a huge challenge as you think of your classic innovator's dilemma, as you think of the Clayton Christensen's definition of how large corporates challenge themselves to move from their existing customer focus to future customer focus, and how innovation can play a role in that activity. And I think this has always been an interesting challenge to see how to reach outside of a successful organization in order to be able to bring these types of opportunities inside and make them part of the product or service offering of any organization. So these are huge challenges that typically a program-oriented organization that allows for the unique nature of innovation to take place, inside and outside of organization. And so you have your entrepreneurship and you have your entrepreneurship, the inside and outside entrepreneurs, and making them work in a seamless way is a challenge. But I think really the core question that you're getting to is one about kind of additive manufacturing from the perspective of innovation, which means that we know that there are no technologies on the stock exchange that are independent. I mean, everything that we think of in the form of technology is a merger or an aggregation or a collision between technologies. Understanding that that's a core part of the challenge, the goal for many large companies in trying to find innovation is to understand how to create the collisions, how to create the intersection between technologies where you can create a whole greater than the sum of its parts. New technologies coming together to create industrial or institutional output. And this is the challenge. So, for me as an architect of innovation, this has been my goal, is to put together the programs, duplicatable, replicatable programs that allow for that collision to take place in a very structured way to ultimately enable those collisions to turn into creation. And this is, kind of the hunter-farmer challenge. So maybe we can stop right there, but if that's
We'll get back to this point. I think, Bill, the role of the architect of the role of the architect of innovation, I think, is going to play a pivotal role in understanding, giving sense of what you're talking about today. Something I want to go though of something that was not making sense in my life a few years ago when I was doing my PhD in open innovation in Berkeley. I was looking at the other side of the bay and down south in this little college, and there was this fantastic program called Technology Venture Program, and I was like, this doesn't make sense. How these people at Stanford were able to put together such a fantastic thing. The Technology Venture Program is incredible, fantastic. Then I realized that the founder of the Technology Venture Program had a PhD from Berkeley. Then, of course, things started to make sense. And we are so fortunate to have here the founder of the Technology Venture Program, among many other things, and he's a professor at Stanford University, Tom Byers. Tom, are you connected? Can you hear me? Tom is a professor of entrepreneurship within the School of Engineering, which is an important aspect to underline as in this joke society, this fantastic place that is Stanford University. The blend between competence came together, and is also a fantastic teacher. let me switch. Tom, can you hear me? Okay, beautiful. Hi, Tom.
Yeah.
Let me um, start with an easy question. We are living very, very strange and difficult time. In a nutshell, innovative entrepreneurship, role that innovation and entrepreneurship can play for the restart that we are hopefully about to go through in the next months and year.
Well, a great deal. First of all, thank you for the kind words. I feel like I'm back at Berkeley with my long hair since I haven't been able to have a haircut in 6 months. And I may have a ponytail by the next time we talk, just like in the old days at University of California, Berkeley. So entrepreneurship is ideal for these conditions. I don't have to recount them, and I don't have to use adjectives like unprecedented and all the other things going on. But what a perfect time to have this kind of panel. So I'll make my remarks short because I want to get to the interaction. I mean, I really enjoyed Lorna bringing up the fact of diversity. And Bill, it's good to know you. I'm looking forward to getting to know you better. I totally agree with everything you said about collisions. But where I've had the joy for 25 years plus 3 days, because that's exactly when I joined, was 25 years ago at the School of Engineering. And now we're a group of a large group of faculty and staff who teach and have proven that you can teach entrepreneurship. And with our colleagues in the design school that Paul will talk about, we've proven that you can innovation and entrepreneurship can be learned by anybody, a college student, an adult. There's even, as you know, folks doing this with kids now. But what's important about entrepreneurship today, in this year, in this crazy year of 2020? Well, there's 2 quotes that have guided us these last 25 years. At the lab, in the main room of the bullpen, if you will, of the lab. One of them is, the bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. And I think I got that from Vinod Khosla about 20 years ago during the .com implosion. The bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. And you can't come up with bigger problems than pandemics or the economic resulting consequences, or especially what we're going through here in the US with social justice, among other things. So the bigger the problem, the bigger opportunity. So that's where entrepreneurship is a perfect discipline to address those issues. The other one, and I got to get this right, even though it's been on the wall. my brain is skipping. All right, entrepreneurs do more than imaginable with less than anyone thought was possible. And that's more of the resource issue. So the first one is around strategy. And the second one is around the fact that entrepreneurs usually do this, or always do this, with much less resources than people thought were possible. Because entrepreneurs start with thinking about the opportunity. And I mean entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs there, Bill, you know, the whole mindset of, they start with a mindset that everything begins with you're talking about technology collisions, but also let's just say the collision between a market and a product or service or a technology. That collision as well. And the search for, just coining a phrase or borrowing a phrase, the product market fit, all based on a vision. So all those acronym or sound bites or cliches apply more than I could ever imagine. And I think entrepreneurship is a great discipline to know at this point. The other one had to do with the fact that entrepreneurs do not start with where bureaucrats start, which is I have this much capital, whether it's human or financial, and that's what defines my opportunity space. They always come at it from the opportunity side to just keep pounding that, because that's the meta contribution I'd like to make today.
Thank you, Tom. Now let's move to the first of our, let's say, two Italian origin somehow, both Paul and Donato. Let's start from Paul. Paul, we met more than 1 year ago, starting this idea of mastermind. Paul has almost 30 years of experience in Stanford, if I'm not wrong. You are now actually the associate vice provost in Stanford University. You built a huge amount of different international programs worldwide, and I could say we are somehow an example. I still remember when we met in London and we discussed in front of a beer about this master program, and I enjoyed a lot that chat. And so you are somehow an entrepreneur. There's a flavor, or more than a flavor, of entrepreneurship in what you are doing. So developing this relationship worldwide with universities, and it's like a startup startupping a new, let's say, business, a new course. So what is your experience in this sense?
Andrea and Alberto, thank you very much. Mille grazie. I privileged to be here with esteemed colleagues, and I wanted to maybe share just a few thoughts about the things that we're doing and why we're doing them. And I think it's at the heart of what I would call design thinking. When we think about design thinking, we're thinking about empathy. How can you sort of consider what customers want? Well, you start with asking questions. And I think the design thinking is about the art of the possible. And it's really asking the question, what if? What if we could work with Sant'Anna to create a program that would leverage the best of what Stanford has to offer in innovation entrepreneurship and combine it with local expertise, you, Andrea, and Alberto, and others, to try to blend the sort of perspective content from Stanford and the practice that you have, and the unbelievable opportunity and creativity of the Italian population and frankly, all of Europe. So this is the sort of how we think about it. In this particular pandemic, I can share another what if question, thinking about the possibilities. What if we could create with a partner in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia a program that would be a learning journey over 6 months, combining static content as well as live interaction via these webinars, just like we're having here today. That led to a program both for top executives as well as leaders in organizations to sort of unlock the perspective that everyone needs to be thinking about, which is, boy, what can I be doing differently? How do I adapt to the marketplace that is so dramatically changed? For education, for example, I think we're never going back to place-based education. It's an awesome thing. But now we have the opportunity to use online modes to extend and expand the opportunity. That again is a what if question. What if we could change the foundation and the ways in which education is delivered to benefit not just the select few who have the money and time to be at a particular place? So, you know, it's with these thoughts that I get totally excited. Stanford has changed my life in two ways. This notion of innovation, asking the question, what if? And then the entrepreneur question, which is how might we do that? Which is what I've learned a lot from Tom Byers and his colleagues, Bob Sutton and others. You know, how might we do something? How do we build a team to impact a particular market and opportunity? We've been successful because we've been able to work closely with partners around the what if question, but also to think about how to deliver something in a way that will generate results, be it financial or psychic, helping people learn.
Paul, what if question is definitely at the heart. Thank you for, I think it's a wonderful way to introduce the panel today, the mindset of the entrepreneur, the effectuation of the entrepreneur that was presented by Tom, the collision aspect that was introduced by Bill, are three ingredients. Let me introduce you a fourth one, coming to Donato. Donato Tramuto, you are the co-chair of the Robert Kennedy International House of Human Rights, as well as the founder and chairman of the Health e-Villages initiative and foundation that you will talk about. You are also an incredibly experienced entrepreneur in the health industry. We came across you because was one of these collisions, and in Tuscany, if Florence, if Pisa people go to Florence, it's definitely a collision going to happen. And so we're so fortunate to find the local headquarters of the RFK Foundation in Florence. And one aspect that I find interesting of your speech and talks is the word integration. Sometimes you've said that entrepreneurship might not only be about innovation, but it's about innovation and integration. So to introduce you, I would like to ask, give us an example or an idea to understand what you mean by integration. Aspetta che we have a problem with your audio. Let's check.
Can you hear me now?
Perfectly.
Thank you, Alberto. What I was saying, I'm honored to be with such a distinguished group of panelists. I don't know if I would accept the word extraordinary entrepreneurship. I have been fortunate that much of my success has evolved around failures. And I think you have to fail to succeed. And I would like to add, as I'm the founder of two companies that I successfully sold, and just recently retired as CEO of one of the largest publicly traded healthcare companies. And so let me, if I may, I'm also the publisher of a book that I released in 2016, which captures a lot of what all of you have been talking about. I will just summarize in 2 minutes what I have learned is that so much of entrepreneurship is exactly what my fellow panelists have described, but I have learned in the last 10, 15 years, I have learned to what you just indicated, that it's not only about innovation, that it is about integration, and we have to be willing to increase our collaborative IQ. And so much of the success that I've had in terms of companies has been my willingness to take my idea, and maybe I have that much which can contribute to the solution that we are looking for, but somebody else might have the other ingredient. And to the degree that you're willing to integrate your idea and to integrate somebody else's idea will create the most significant solution that you are looking for. A number of years ago, I was on a panel at Harvard, and I came up with a word that has been kicked around now, and it's basically my word. It's not in the dictionary. And the word is collaboration. How willing are you to collaborate and then innovate? And I'll give you one example. In 2016, when I took over as CEO of Healthways, which was a very significant publicly traded company, we were on the verge of going bankrupt. And I was struggling with one division that was doing very well and another division that was losing money. Well, I was born at night, but not last night. That combination was not going to lead to success in the public market. And I was struggling. I was trying to innovate. What should I do to save that failing division? I finally picked the phone up and I called a fellow CEO requesting if he would work with me would be willing to pay him to take that failing division if he would be willing to take the employees and bring his product and integrate it. Long and short, 4 years later, that decision to collaborate with somebody else saved about 2,000 jobs. Our company took off and soared in the public market, and his company did well because he needed a certain product that we had. He had a certain product that I didn't have. And rather than wasting the valuable time and resources, because in many respects, your ego gets in the way, right? You want to try to save the organization when in fact, what you should be looking at is trying to find others that can assist and support you. My last point is, as an entrepreneur, nobody cares about what you do until they know why you do it. And the passion, and I know Steve Jobs talked about this in many of his speeches, that passion can win the day. And I like to add another word to passion, and that's compassionate leadership. It's something that I have been pushing for my entire life. When I first started out as a businessman, many people, when I used the term compassionate leadership, they would look at me and say, that's weak leadership. Well, what do we need today with the pandemic? We need compassionate leadership, the willingness to work with others, the willingness to understand you need to develop your own self-awareness where you may have failings and where you may have good attributes. And you have to be willing to develop others, and you have to be willing to recognize that in order to get to your end solution, you have to be compassionate to get there. And so those are a few of my thoughts, Alberto.
Donato, I want to get back to you on this topic of compassion and the work you do right now in areas that are non-profit organization, and I think it's very interesting. I want to understand the blend, but first of all, you said a very interesting point that brings me back to Bill. Donato's example, you know, the example that he gave us makes. I would use it as a case study on how to make open innovation work in a mature environment. You know, it's so cool and fantastic to talk about startups and the beginning of beautiful journeys, and then okay, some of them will fail and will bring it to the ecosystem, blah blah blah. Okay, wonderful. Let's pin that moment. I know it's important, but then if we especially talk about the Italian ecosystem that you advise and know so well, we need to keep an eye and a mind open on how to work on scaling up opportunities and make a blend possible, like Donato's example was, between moderate innovators or mature sectors that might need a push from outside. Is a type of collision that we that we can see and we can discuss about. What can you add on the type of in this scenario, Bill, to understand this phenomenon that is so important, in my opinion, for the future of this country?
Yeah, we're kind of talking about a time challenge in many ways. So this is particularly unique, and certainly different geographies have different challenges around this. You know, when you're doing open innovation as a large corporate, your goal is to create collisions. You're clearly selecting entrepreneurial projects that have a desire to be part of part of a larger organization or a larger service or product offering. And so that is by nature a programmatic approach to creating the collisions that are driving adoption. So within a large organization, and in many cases, this is acquisition or technology integration. One of the core challenges we have in the Italian community, in the European community, and in any really conservative investment, challenge of enabling the innovator. moving them fast enough to meet the opportunity window of the market. And for European countries, this is a big variation from really successful entrepreneurial integration ecosystems like in California and Tel Aviv. You have these very dynamic ecosystems where things move very, very quickly based on the urgency of the entrepreneurial mindset. In Europe, we have this beautiful culture of patience, but that culture of patience doesn't necessarily work in a technology environment where the adoption of technology is accelerating every single minute. I mean, this is the compression of the acceleration of technology has been a dramatic challenge for, what you would look at as being conservative investment communities. What this means is the velocity of capital movement at the is one of the core challenges. Looking for open innovation opportunities need to have a system that's moving capital very quickly. And this is venture capital, business angels, capital on the lending side, where you're either lending directly to startups or and that's an even more important part of it. But the velocity of that capital is a core challenge. New technology ready to integrate with existing large corporations. If you don't have that velocity, companies don't get enough money fast enough to finish the job. They never get to the market. So as an open innovation driver for kind of challenging that integration, the goal for European communities, for Italian communities, and for other really conservative investment zones is to put the risk management architectures in place and the deal flow systems in place to accelerate the velocity of capital movement so that you can make sure that technology projects can get to a level that's acceptable for large corporations to integrate. And you have to get there extremely quickly in today's environment. So this is, in many ways, I think some of the comments I heard earlier today, and certainly this speaks to Bobby Kennedy's speech in 1966, using that Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. The idea that, as you mentioned earlier, the bigger the challenge, the bigger the opportunity. This truly is one of the core urgency challenges that we have in the entrepreneurial space right now, in the innovation space, is to accelerate all of the innovation that's coming through these very dynamic scientific zones like Italy, for example, one of the best scientific, but making sure that the velocity of capital movement to finance those projects happens at a rate that's commensurate with the needs of large corporations for integration of open innovation. And this is really our architectural challenge, to make sure that all of these pieces are working together to get all the money you need, all the resources you need to finish the job. If you don't, the risk is too high. So you have to get all the money you need to finish the job, and you have to get it within a time frame that the opportunity window allows, so that large corporations have this capacity to formulate their integration plans around adequately matured technology innovations. It's a big challenge, because we're talking in some ways about structural changes to laws, but also structural changes to bureaucracy, and then also cultural changes.
And cultural changes, Bill. And so maybe we are not in the right panel right now to discuss about the structural changes that need to the Italian ecosystem. Probably we'll hear from our experts on Friday when we discuss about the landscaping. If we want to stick to entrepreneurship, I want to hear what Lorna has to say. But first of all, let me get technical a little bit with my friend Paul. There is a nice question, Paul, in the chat that you are not able to see because it's on the YouTube channel. Simone Urbini is asking us, beautiful, you're discussing about interesting thinking, interesting things. Design thinking is a fantastic tool, but Simone is asking, how can established organization like the ones Bill is talking about implement the type of reasoning you are implementing in Stanford for the D School? Design thinking does this need an enormous amount of reskilling. So I'm when I hear a lot of people, when we discuss about the content of mind, we hear a lot the concern that reskilling might be a very, very challenging endeavor to take in order to meet the challenges that, for example, Tom has discussed before. Give us your secret recipe.
Yes. So I think, one of the things that's underlying this is innovation and entrepreneurship is tough. And in fact, as Lorna said, and as Donato mentioned, right, when you have that level of diversity, which is required to get really interesting things done, you're actually setting yourself up for significant conflict. When you have a startup in an organization inside a unit charged with doing innovation, right, they're often viewed as sort of an antibody, a virus, and the organization attacks as an antibody. And so I think one of the things that we Stanford think about is how can we provide a baseline of education and perspective on innovation and then entrepreneurship? How can we educate everyone? And if you don't, although I know we have a mastermind program, you don't need a master's degree to understand the basics of innovation and entrepreneurship. And for organizations we've worked with, large Fortune 500 companies, governments, institutions, it's about creating a common language. And really, you need just a few hours to do that, to try to create the common language to activate the innovation and entrepreneurship spirit within your organization, so you can actually have the diversity of thought and perspective, operate with compassionate leadership. Donato, I love this, but also address the conflict that will occur. You'll have to make some difficult decisions, and if you're operating with empathy and everyone understands where you're headed, you have an opportunity to leverage and find innovation perspectives from across the organization. I've often said that the administrative assistant who sits at the front of our organization has more intelligence about the comings and goings of our customers and of our team, and can provide key insight about opportunities.
May I build on that? And sure. I'd love to hear the other panelists react. I'm thinking, because I wanted to get specific. Well, first of all, I had a question earlier about, is there any organization doing what Bill was talking about well? I mean, is there a case where we can, a good analog in the country? Because I'd be fascinated to hear that, because all this is really hard. I agree with everybody what it said, but I want to build on real quick with Paul and get specific. This question comes up all the time, and there's nothing secret about it. I mean, it's as I said earlier, this can be taught and learned, but we have to find out what we want to teach and learn. And so I've asked, having been here for 25 years and seen lots of graduates out of the engineering school and the business school folks who come over and take our courses. In talking to them, I asked the same question. I mean, what that was just asked of Paul. And I'm remembering, I'll try to remember two things. I'll share two things that I stick in my brain. One is a company needs to pick a driver or a champion or somebody to lead the effort, whatever this effort is internally, this entrepreneurship effort. And it's somebody who acts like a startup CEO. And it may not be the most likable person. Maybe that person hasn't been playing the perfect game they're willing to take a risk in terms of setting the status quo. So pick a driver as the leader, a real go-getter. I'm trying to think of the right term there. And then the second one is fund the project like a venture capitalist would. And this is going to be a challenge because, as we well know, most venture capital investments don't do that well. And when you're in a capital budgeting situation, rather than a independent startup situation, that will be a leap for certain companies. So when I say pick and fund like a VC, that would be like, I mean, there's many aspects of that, but one would be stage the investments over time. Don't give the entire amount of money it would take to reach be successful and have a contribution margin that's positive, but fund it in stages and only after those milestones are met, just like a VC would. And here's the thing, when that money is given, certainly there's some oversight, but leave them alone and don't get too much in about KPIs and metrics. Don't get too much absorbed in that. Allow for there to be some failure. That was great that Donato brought up, that his life has benefited from that. So there's my specific suggestion.
May I?
Thank you. Okay. Lorna, please.
Just quickly, because I wanted to say something while Bill was speaking, but it's good that I haven't, because what Paul and Tom just added kind of goes along that way. Because we have, one of the reasons I am in this position is because I worked as a business angel with several startups coming out from Scuola Sant'Anna, just to mention some. And so we have a struggling startup systems in a country that is known for its own creativity and technology that together combined are really explosive as a potential. But then we have an extremely slow business culture and a stagnant financial market. What we're saying altogether is that startups can teach a lot to larger companies in terms of how to make innovation. And it's good to have that experience also for startups, because they can learn and they can gain from the larger companies. And I'm tempted, but I'm sure I will do. I'll get in touch with Bill, knowing that he's advising Intesa and we are partners, because I'm a doer. Alberto knows I cannot just sit and wait, but we may be in a position to help, because Artes itself is stimulating the birth of many innovation projects that may be interesting for many industrial partners. It would be great to have some kind of mentorship program started, and apply some design thinking altogether to that. So it's not a question, sorry guys, but I was just adding something that we may do all together, just to leverage on these great group synergies, because you know so many great things and we can learn from the States, but what we have here is something that can really mean a lot to our system in a pretty unique way.
The points raised by Tom just before and emphasized in the term of giving a concrete sense of action by Lorna now open up however important aspect of choice, because we all have in mind the names and faces of champions that were not very passionate with us, and maybe not our favorite people to have around as colleagues. So sometimes the choice of who's the winner, who's the loser, who's the champion, and who has to follow is not an easy task to achieve for an organization. You might lose momentum with other people that might contribute to the successful launch of your enterprise. This like a provocative thought from maybe a European thought. How can be inclusive? how can we be inclusive? You know, we talked about diversity, but we talk at the same time, Tom. Now, Tom, I'm picking on you, but it's a question for the floor, really. How can we be both cherry picking, you know, giving the resources and the wings to our champions, but at the same time be respectful and allow diversity and compassionate leadership.
Can I give the floor to Donato because he's hand-
Donato would like to say something. Please, Donato, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, definitely.
Very, very good.
Thank you.
You know, my favorite philosopher, Yogi Berra, once said, "You don't want to make the wrong mistake." I love that quote. I think all of this begins with culture, and I have devoted an entire chapter in my book. If you get the culture right, everything else follows. And I want to go back to the word I think, Bill, you use about empathy. And how do you teach empathy? And quite honestly, I have spent the last 43 years of my business career talking about compassionate leadership. And I have to tell you that I am very optimistic, and I have used this term. In addition to herd immunity, I hope what comes out of this pandemic is herd kindness and herd compassion. And the reason why I'm stressing that, because if the culture is not one of compassion, if the culture is not one of inclusion, if the culture is not one of respecting the dignity and the persona of what each person brings to the organization, don't you stall innovation? Don't you, in many respects, delay the creative thinking that can be unleashed in an organization? And so the challenge I ask my fellow panelists, how do we move to this understanding that perhaps in our curriculum, not only in the corporate entity, but in the academia entity, how do we really build this compassion? It's very funny. I was interviewed recently and I was asked by a reporter a question that I have never been asked before. I thought it was very provocative. And the question was, Donato, what are you most afraid will not be here 10 years from now? And I was able to answer it. I said, compassion. I'm afraid that for whatever reason, whether it is a political challenge, whether it has been in the academic environment or in corporate environment, we have had a diminishment of compassion. And I think if that continues, we will have a diminishment in the way we are advancing creativity and innovation. So I throw this out. How do we change this tide?
I think that Donato, we were hoping for an answer from you. You know, like.
If I may add, I'll tell you what I started doing about 15 years ago. I spend about 100 hours interviewing my executives. And I don't talk about what they did in their professional lives. They are before me, quite honestly, because they have the functional expertise. I take them right back. In fact, I shock the candidates. I will ask them on the first interview, bring me back to the day you were born. I want to know, you know, I think it was Mark Twain who once said the two most important days in your life is the day you are born and the day you discover why. I want to understand, and I'll tell you the times that I have not done that, I have made hiring mistakes. I brought members on the team who were not collaborative, who did not understand compassion. And so I think it starts, if you want that culture of compassion, then you have to make sure that you're not the only one that's leading compassion. So I think it starts with you establishing the culture and then establishing a hiring practice that helps to avoid as many. You're always going to make errors. I made plenty of errors in my lifetime on hiring, but I could tell you that I got better in the last 15 years in terms of implementing a process that I did not deviate from. So I give you one example of how I started to change. And interesting, if you look at the situation that happened at Healthways, which took the stock from $8 to $48, it wasn't my business decision. The problem with the stock is that nobody has a spreadsheet to measure the culture. Nobody has a spreadsheet to measure the training programs. But that company was successful. The two not-for-profits that I launched in the last 15 years, both have been successful. The company that I launched in 2008 and sold to Merck, that was successful, but that was all a combination of making sure we brought compassion and that we promoted the double bottom line, that you can be profitable and you can put a soul into the company and give back. So Alberto, those are a few examples I present to you.
No, great. Tom, if I can, Tom, you wrote last year, I think it was, a piece I keep assigning to my students because I'm from here because you guys are so far away. Here in Pisa, I'm a Silicon Valley boy, and so the students tell me, no, but in Silicon Valley, everybody fail fast, and it's all business. And then I send them your piece where you claim, and you're teaching this now to Stanford, that values, principle, and ethics are very important, maybe more important than ever to innovators and entrepreneurial organizations. And this squares very well with me in my mind with what Donato said. Can you give us the sense of urgency, even in the most dynamic place on earth that is Silicon Valley, is how central to the debate down there is what you're writing about morals and ethics in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, in the entrepreneurial company?
Well, it's going to build on what Donato's been emphasizing and started at the top when Lorna mentioned the word diversity. So I'm sure this is clear to everybody on the panel, and I want to make sure it's clear to everybody listening in today. The last 20 years have been terrific in there being so many models of innovation and entrepreneurship, frameworks, techniques, methods. And there's great people like Bill who integrate them to assist corporations and those large enterprises and not just startups. I really like this word compassion because the words values and principles and applied ethics we're talking about here, not, we're not trying to be amateur philosophers, but here, as we're talking about professional matters, it's great to throw in that word compassion and passion, which was also brought up, because before the pandemic, before the economic calamity, before this rise in the importance of social justice this year, the last few years in the tech industry were really ugly. And there were plenty of examples that somehow all these frameworks being taught not just by Stanford, but all of our peers around the world. As Paul noted, we from the United Arab Emirates to every continent, and all the Stanfords of the world have these robust entrepreneurship and innovation education programs underway. What is missing? How in the world, and I don't have to name the names, but they were front page news until this year changed everything, of bad behavior, specifically in tech intensive industries. So what were we teaching these students and frankly professionals in executive education that was going so awry? And that's because we lost our way. And it's not rocket science to correct it, but it does take courage to start emphasizing the things that Donato's talking about, because in a way, you got to have patience. So Italy's the perfect place to demonstrate compassion in entrepreneurship, compassion in innovation. I don't know what kind of sound bites will suffice to get into people's heads, but if there's too much emphasis on valuations or too much emphasis on just the journey to find product market fit and find success without thinking about the culture emphasizing values from the get-go. So let me be specific and then I'll be quiet. This touches on everything from responsible technology. That's another way of saying everybody being nervous about AI, being nervous about CRISPR in the biotech world, being nervous about these amazing technological leaps are taking place. What about the consequences? I live about 5 blocks from Mark Zuckerberg here in Palo Alto. And that's on my morning walk. I walk by his house with all his security here in downtown Palo Alto. And listen, we could talk about Facebook for a while and how it lost its way from being something that should be celebrated as an amazing success to now people are worried that it is dangerously affecting democracies. I mean, wow. So those kinds of issues around responsible technology matter. These issues around diversity, equity, inclusion matter because it's an obvious thing to include in building a company and building a culture. And there's lots of, not because it's just the right thing to do or the feel-good thing to do, because it's strategically a competitive advantage. So it's not emphasizing you got to do this like we're some sort of we're not embracing the beauty of people doing this for their intrinsic reasons, but DEI or diversity, equity, inclusion is a great strategic advantage tool. And then much less as we are teaching, and I promise to be quiet, as we're teaching these students, we've seen-
on, Tom, no worries.
Last piece, because it really does come down to the student. And I don't care if it's the student in the mastermind and the mind program at that age, or at the they're 20 years old in their undergraduate education, they are ready, yes, to take a philosophy course, take a traditional ethics courses, but they are ready and to absorb what it means to take personal responsibility, to build a personal set of values and frameworks, so that when they go in to the rest of their career, that will serve them well, and we won't have this problem that Donato was talking about, and we can change we can change the trajectory.
Donato, please. Yes, we can switch on the mic. Okay.
First of all, may I applaud what you are doing, and may I share something? I'm going to put my Robert F. Kennedy hat on now. Alberto, the challenge is that we still have a generation of leaders who are not going through that system and undoing what they have been practicing for years. You bring certain biases to your business environment. About 4 years ago, here I talk about compassionate leadership to all of you. I'm embarrassed to say about 4 years ago, I started to sense that the organization that I was leading, 3,000 employees, that we were not practicing that sense of compassionate leadership and acceptance and dignity for all. And I went around and started talking to various individuals. I ended up giving them my mobile cell phone. 20% of the workforce called me, and they shared with me that they were not being respected for their talents. They were not being included, that there was management bullying going on. I'm pleased to share with you that we have changed that in the company, but what I did is the Tremuto Foundation is now funding a grant at the Robert F. Kennedy Center here in the United States. We are developing a workplace dignity program that we are going to take out to the employers. And we are going to educate, because a lot of what's happening right now is leaders and managers have inherited the leadership standards that they learned 20 or 30 years ago from perhaps a non-compassionate leader. So we have to undo that, in addition to educating our students. And I'm very pleased to say to you, this program will be released by the end of the year. The Robert F. Kennedy Center will distribute it to corporations. We have a number of corporations that are on the advisory board. And they have also accepted that 60 million Americans have designated themselves as being bullied in the workforce. And so when we talk about innovation, you have 60 million Americans that have been bullied in the workforce. 2/3 of the bullying is being done by men. How do you advance this sense of creativity and innovation? So I'm pleased to share with you at the Robert F. Kennedy Center, supported by my foundation, we will make available a corporate program that will help to educate CEOs and other leaders when to identify and recognize the bullying that's going on in the organization and how to practice workplace dignity.
I wonder if we can go back to Bill now for a comment on what we are hearing, Bill, in order to make change happen, you need this kind of like pivot moment. We are going through a lot of, like in my research now, I'm looking how SMEs across Europe are pivoting their innovation strategies now through the pandemic, through the situation. I wonder if you can help me understand what are the characteristics of that can really pivot change in this environment such as ours that Tom just said might be very good for being patient and being inclusive and being compassionate. So somehow like we need this pivot for change. We might have that now, but at the same time Tom has described us this environment has some that are certain characteristics of this patient capitalism that might give us an advantage to make an interesting change become reality.
Yeah, that is another big question there. So, it's actually very interesting when we talk about the difference between large corporations, SMEs, and entrepreneurial startups, because they have very different human resource needs. And this, in many ways, drives the cultural reaction of companies to their environment. So just as an example, a bank, which specifically to manage risk. The goal is to do things traditionally as a bank with the expectation of low risk. So you selectively choose people who are able to think with this strict mentality of reducing risk. And at the other end of this spectrum, you have the entrepreneur. When as you think about design thinking, you think about lateral thinking or divergent thinking. The challenge of the hunter versus the farmer, where you think of a farmer as being detail-oriented, patient, methodical, and slow to change, and you think of a hunter with the definition of distracted noticing, interrupted by brief periods of intensely focused panic. Have the capacity to be nonlinear thinkers and to be able to reach out for the types of resources that are needed to get a startup off the ground, to get a new innovation moving, and to think outside of the box, that lateral thinking challenge. But then needing to hand over those types of technology innovations that might come from that kind of nonlinear thinking to a linear thinker who can do the work to make the business function. So the idea of the farmer. And in that, we're also, selectively choosing levels of risk management and levels of, of communication capacity. I love this concept of speaking about compassion. I know Alan Alda, the great actor, has an entire series on active listening and using compassion in your conversations, that type of mentality. But the idea of taking that to the point of being part of a corporate culture means that it has to be taught. In fact, when you think about the idea of the Hippocratic Oath being taught as part of the medical profession, should we have a compassionate oath that is part of the entrepreneurial educational process, so that you can get to this point where you can take a nonlinear thinker that can communicate in linear ways with those around them that need to be able to function as part of the workforce, and bring a level of understanding between these different parties for the needs that they all have. And these are big transitions from nonlinear ideation, or you think of as this and challenging products and services to make it to market, to become mature. And within that communication piece, in many cases, one of the things that we can lose is our humanity as we move through this cycle. And we're seeing this in politics today in a way that is, maybe it's not new, but it's definitely further exposed. The idea that we can get back using a catastrophe or the crisis of this pandemic to relate to the opportunity of responsibility coming back into the equation. In fact, it reminds me back again, how you're talking about Robert F. Kennedy, and we're talking about Bobby Kennedy, speaker. One of the things he mentioned in that 1966 speech in South Africa was the idea of getting too comfortable. We live in interesting times. So here we are at this point where this conversation could be an interesting transitional point towards the concept of using this Hippocratic Oath, this concept of evaluating your position in forcing your activities to move towards the common good. It's an interesting opportunity, certainly one for further discussion.
So this is really the chance, I would say, according to what we said, that we are opening so many interesting topics. Compassionate leadership. How can we apply in the education, Paul? How the mastermind, let's say, can be improved? Why not in this way? What do you
we are left with a lot of homework to do, in my opinion, Andrea, after all this discussion.
If you go back to what Bill just said, Bill, you are so correct. When I started introducing this concept, my executives looked at me like I had two heads. They thought compassionate leadership was being nice. Well, being nice is table stakes, and I came up with 7 variables, and I'll share them with you here today. Compassionate leadership is about having self-awareness. Every night when I go to bed at night, I ask myself, what could I have done better? Compassionate leadership is about removing barriers for your team to be successful. Compassionate leadership is about social impact, putting a soul in that company. Compassionate leadership is about living to moral standards and including everyone. Compassionate leadership is about having passion. It's about making decisions about team members around collaboration. And most of all, compassionate leadership is about being humble. It's about understanding that you don't have all the answers. And so we had cards. Each executive and employee had a card, and it spelled out the compassionate leadership. Now, you're not going to change it overnight, but I could tell you that each month that went by, we made an enormous difference. And I am happy to say by the time I left the company, it was a different company in 2020 than it was when I arrived in 2015. And so, Bill, I love your recommendation. My last point, colleagues, there is a new chronic condition that has hit our society, and it is loneliness. And it just went on steroids as a result of COVID-19. And loneliness has been proven to be as toxic as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. I think compassionate leadership can help us to de-lonely, if you will, the environment that we are working in. So I ask you to keep that in mind. We are now going to come out of COVID-19 with an enormous amount of mental health challenges, an enormous amount of detachment. And boy, if we can be the leaders to help. My last point is, over the last few months, I've had the advantage. I sit on 9 boards. I sit on a private equity board. I've had the advantage of listening to about 50 to 60 CEOs. Very interesting. I can put them in 2 buckets. Those CEOs that had a sense of compassion and how well they have navigated through this, and those CEOs who unfortunately go around with a pooper scooper because they don't start with compassion first. They start with tenacity, and then they lose the trust, and then they hope to get the tenderness back. I had a theory in my organization called the 3 T's. Practice tenderness first to get the trust, and then you can be tenacious.
Thank you so much, Nat, for this. I think everyone should really make it a sculpture of this word that you just said. Let's get ready for a final round. We need to wrap up this incredible conversation. Let me just remind Tom is suggesting to check out the podcast series on entrepreneurship and ethics. I don't know if we can post on the YouTube the link, because Google doesn't allow to post, but I think you can Google it, and I think it's very easy for you to find the podcast series on entrepreneurship and ethics. I think is with the e-corner at Stanford. Let's get ready for a final round with our incredible speakers. And Paul, now we are coming to you. You were saved at the last second by Donato. Now you're ready to prepare your answer. There is a lot that we have to do. Our courses will start in January, so we do have the time to do a lot of homework. Help us understand what is the role that Mastermind can play, and in general, continuous education. How can continuous education can play a role in implementing all the things that we're doing today?
So thank you. I just want to. I'm not sure I can summarize everything, but a few thoughts. First, I love my job. I get to work at Stanford University with some of the best faculty in the world, and I was a graduate of Stanford many years ago. After 32 years, I get a chance to benefit the entire world with the great education that's at Stanford. It's not just the benefit of a few people who can afford by time and money to be there, but rather extended across the globe. And our partnership with Sant'Anna is doing exactly this, I think. We have a chance to build a program like Education Today that needs to be flexible and can be to meet this incredible and unique time. So I think that's really important. I also want to say that we can start injecting, I will call it empathy, really trying to, we can teach people to ask questions. And I think at Stanford in the D School, and if you can build habits of asking questions, it not only permeates the everyday. The first question I ask my folks when they come visit me is, how's it going? Just that simple question changes the frame. And then you can start to ask more questions. What if we can work together? What if that question, again, foundational to the D School is, and then to Donato's point, the how might we question is also really important. I think if we can do that as individuals, we start to change the dialogue with people. As an organization, we run a team of 80 people. We have between 30 and 40 million annually that we generate. And we're here for each other. We have a printed set of values, and we're servant leaders. We are subservient to faculty like Tom and others, but we bring our expertise and knowledge in support of extending what the great things that Stanford is doing. And then finally, I think the homework, Alberto, is we all need to get online. Go watch the edX happiness course. There's a bunch of different things that we can do in terms of educating ourselves. the education is ubiquitous these days. So at a minimum, we have to use this lifelong learning journey to try to make sure that we're, both from an organizational perspective, driving the right values, and also on an individual perspective, keeping up to date with the latest trends. What the hell is AI, and why should I care? I don't know about, you know, that. Then I can understand why the ethics that Tom and his team have built are so important. So
yeah, thank you, Paul. Bill and Tom, feel free to close as you see fit, but I would love to hear from you both, going back to Paul's first remarks, what is your biggest what if right now? I would be very curious, but, you know, see, this is the final round, so use it as you see fit, but if you can indulge me, I'd be very interested to know what is your biggest what if?
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, so what if? Boy, so many opportunities to go off in lots of different directions. You know, this is I look at today as being one of the most opportunistic periods in all of human history, is from you know, from my time point. And I look at the location that I'm in right now as being probably the most opportunistic location that I can be in personally. I'm in northern Italy. I see, you know, some of the most important technologies that are being developed. I get a chance to see all these, about 1,000 deals a year probably, and through this I have opportunity to see the potential for connectivity between all of these different players, all these different stakeholders inside of these larger international ecosystems, as well as this specific Italian and European ecosystem. And, you know, my opportunity as it sits in front of me right now is to encourage some of the international players that we have to look at the community of science that is happening outside of the major innovation ecosystems that we know today, and ask this question: what if we were to kind of focus a little bit more of our economic energy on seeing if we can drive some of these technologies to international markets? I think in many cases, high-tech innovation ecosystems, that we miss certain opportunities in areas where the science may be even better, but the ecosystem hasn't historically supported it in the same way. So this is a tough time. This is absolutely a difficult time. We went through this incredibly difficult period in Italy, and we seem to be moving in the right direction right now. And at the same time, watching what's happening in the U.S. and certainly in the Bay Area, where I have family, I look very closely at what's happening there. And as we move through these periods of crisis, this may be the most opportunistic moment that we've ever had. And I think in some ways this defines entrepreneurship. The idea that you can look at something like the economic crisis in 2020, and the answer is, what a great opportunity to make some global economic impact. And this is where we sit today. So it's really great having all of you today. And I think between the 5 or 6 of us that have been speaking today, I think we probably have a library of some of the best quotes that have ever been made by humankind, from Yogi Berra to Steve Jobs to Mahatma Gandhi. Here we have great things coming out of us today. So thank you for including me with this esteemed panel.
The pleasure is ours. Tom.
Yeah, so I'll build on that. I have a quote. I've got one more, Bill, Donato, Paul, and everybody. The what if for me is, what if we could travel again someday, and I would to come visit Italy? Right now, I was supposed to be packing up to come and spend the rest of this calendar year, but that is canceled and it's been moved to the first half of 2022. So I will be in residence at the Stanford and Florence campus.
Yeah.
And first half of 22, when I think the MIND program will be finishing up. So hopefully next year in 2021, I can come and visit and participate in some of the sessions live. But in the meantime, I'm thinking about everything that started with Andrea. I'm sorry, from Lorna at the beginning when she introduced herself. And I found this quote. So here we go, since we've been using them. This is from a pal, Walter Isaacson's book called The Innovators. A few years ago. Also, the fellow wrote, books about Steve Jobs and so on. But anyway, he's referring to Florent, and I have this handy as a picture of the Ponte Vecchio to remind me that what we've been talking about this whole session has been this collision of the technology with the humanities. So, here's this quote: "Like many aspects of the digital age, this idea that innovation resides where art and science connect is not new. Leonardo da Vinci was the exemplar of the creativity that flourishes when the humanities and sciences interact. When Einstein here in the US was working out general relativity, he would pull out his violin and play Mozart until he could reconnect to what he called the harmony of the spheres." So I'm echoing Bill. I hope as we come out of it, we are in an opportunity-rich zone, and we will seize them if we remember the harmony of the spheres.
Donato, thank you, Tom, for this. Donato, you didn't tell us. Some of your fans on YouTube are asking me to make sure you tell us what is your life's big bulldozer moment, and I need to ask you, because your fans on the chat are asking me to make sure I get to that. So in your final 30 seconds, can you tell me what a bulldozer moment is? And let me open your mic.
First of all, let me thank all of you. I have broken one of my rules. I never join a panel unless I've had an opportunity to meet the panelists. And I'm so glad that I didn't follow that rule. All of you are awesome. My bulldozer moment, I've had many, but the one that changed my life is that I was supposed to be on the second plane that hit the South Tower on September 11th, 2001. My two friends and their 3-year-old who were staying with me and changed their flight to go out with me on September 11th got on that plane. I changed the flight because I had a toothache on September 10th. And they lost their lives when the plane hit towers. And that changed my life. It made me more conscious of how fragile our lives are and the commitment to this compassionate leadership concept. But I like to leave all of you with, Robert Kennedy, as you know, enjoyed quoting from Camus. And one of his famous favorite quotes from Camus was, "Perhaps we cannot prevent the world from being a world in which children are tortured, but we can reduce the number of tortured children." And maybe that's what compassionate leadership is about. I'm not that naive to think that tomorrow we're going to have 100% compassion. But maybe our role as leaders is that we can reduce the number of people who have not had that embracement of compassion. And my last point, when you look at what's been going on the last few months, COVID-19 has had a disproportionate impact on the minority population. When you look at our economy, 20 to 25% of Americans can't put $400 together for an emergency fund. When you look at what happened with George Floyd, all of this points to inequality, and all of this points to the diminishment of compassion. If not now, when? I would like to offer my time and my energy group and to whoever's listening, we can make this world a better place, and we can make this world a more compassionate place. And I think kindness is the new currency. And I'm with all of you, and I will devote whatever effort I can to move the needle forward. Again, thank you all. It's been an honor.
Thank you, Donato. Lorna, I think the type of environment your organization, Artes, is trying to offer, is trying to do, is really like an important platform to build some of the aspects that we have seen and we discussed today. What are you taking home?
I've heard all of you with a lot of interest, and I leave this session today stronger in my conviction that as Italians, some of the talents you described that we have all to strive for kind of come natural to us, you know, family values, we all, or most of us are our parents. That alone, if we could remember that when we work every day, and obviously, you know, women kind of do that more than men, so we go back to the importance of diversity. That would help so much in taking business decisions that are not just about the bottom line, you know, and being with a longer view, longer term view, and thinking about everything that is around the concept of business that we've all been speaking about. I really hope that whoever, you know, is so lucky to attend Mastermind will be involved also with Artes activity, because Artes is a no-profit organization, but it's not slow. We're moving fast. We're supporting many businesses to start. We're not very rich, but we have visibility. We can probably help larger corporations as well as small ones to make all these things happen. So we really want to be an open, I mean, we are open, but we don't see many people today, but we want to be open virtually in the meantime for anybody that wants to share and build this network, this type of network through us. So be welcome with us.
What if our ecosystem could find the strengths and the resources to architect new, exciting entrepreneurial collisions? What if our capitalism could come to terms to a new Hippocratic oath? What if we finally realize how fragile we are? And Andrea, what if we could contribute to the rise of a new generation of compassionate leaders? On behalf of Scuola Sant'Anna and Istituto di Management, let me thank everyone who was connected today. It was an incredible conversation, absolutely non and obvious one. We touched about things that a lot of people talk, but I think we did it with a twist that is really unique. Andrea, I leave you the floor to tell us about the next episodes of Mind Change Week. But on my side, thank everyone, all the people that connected from the US and from Northern Italy and from Pisa. And I'll see you tomorrow. And in the meanwhile, I'll put on the slide.
No, yes, Sam, thank you, Alberto. I mean, this amazing conversation is clearly the perfect input for tomorrow day. Tomorrow, the topic will be about human factor, but humans not as resources, let me say, to squeeze, absolutely resources that should be valued and increased and important for the company, for the human relationship. So tomorrow we will discuss about that. And so tomorrow, 2 p.m., this is the channel again. Thank you, really. Thank you so much, our friends from United States, Italy, everybody. And it was really great pleasure for us, honestly, great pleasure.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Let me switch off the stream.